Hello everyone, I'm Katie, and today I'm going to be doing a fun video on Christian fiction books with little to no romance in them. So for me, I do love romance books. I love them. But sometimes it's just nice to take a break and just read some really good and gripping books with little to no romance. So this is great for anybody who doesn't want a lot of romance in their books. If you're a guy or a girl and you don't want a lot of romance, these are recommendations for you. So I have a pile of books here, plus a couple that I don't have physically. So I'm going to do those first. Okay, so I'm going to mention two authors, Frank Peretti, which obviously really doesn't have any romance in him. Honestly, he's a little too creepy for me personally. And if he's too creepy for you, check out Ted Dekker. It still has that thriller aspect. It still has that tiny bit of creepy atmosphere, but definitely not to the extent of Frank Peretti. I love Ted Dekker. I've read probably a good 60 to 70% of the books he's written, and so I really enjoy them. They're definitely different if you like Frank Peretti, just less on the creepy side as Frank Peretti. So definitely check out Ted Dekker if you haven't yet. Okay, the next one that I don't have a copy of is the Bright Empire series by Stephen R. Lawhead. I'm still in the middle of currently, but there is really no romance at all in that series. It is a fantasy time travel series. It is about a guy and a girl who've been dating, but they're kind of like, they don't want to date, really, but like they're kind of in that situation of like, we're getting older, let's just date, I guess. So they end up dating, and then they both end up somehow being in two different timelines. And so they end up time traveling. And so she's stuck in like a very, very distant past, I believe, and he's stuck somewhere else. And so he's trying to find her while also other mysteries are going on with this skin map. Yes, it's made from real skin. Really gross, I know. That part grosses me out. But the rest is really good. And I loved the girl's perspective in the first book. I just thought it was great how she was really adapting to her life in that time. And I really loved her character and her character growth. Like, she went from this really shy, kind of like very kind of not snobby necessarily, but she had kind of like that mean librarian feel to her. But then you just saw her blossom throughout the book, and I just love that. So I am currently hopefully going to read book 3 very soon. So definitely check those out. No romance at all, so definitely check it out. Okay, and so I have quite a few physical books. So the first one is Shadows in the Mind's Eye by Jane Eyre Trump. This is definitely there is no like romance. It's about a husband and wife, but it's more along the lines of working against mental illness and as well as PTSD. So we're talking about PTSD in this book, and it's more along those lines. There's no really romance things in it, even though there is a husband and wife. But it's more about how they're going to survive PTSD, both of them. Her side, what happened with her father in the past and his family and his ties with underworld dealings and stuff. And then we have her husband who just came back from the war with PTSD. So we have both of those situations going on through this book. There's definitely a little bit of a mystery going on in the background as well. So I think there was a few, if I'm not mistaken, there was a few like borderline swear words in here, but it still is labeled as Christian fiction. So I did really enjoy the book, and this cover, I don't know what it is about. It's creepy. Like, it screams creepiness, but it's not really that creepy. It's not creepy. Okay, so the next one is The Long March Home by Marcus Brotherton and Tosca Lee. I really enjoyed this book more than I thought I would. This is a wartime novel during World War II in the Pacific. And so we're following these 3 men who have gone off to war, and we're kind of doing dual timeline of when they were home, kind of becoming friends and their life back at home, and then when they're becoming prisoners of war in the Pacific. And so it's very, very heartbreaking. There's definitely some gruesome images of physical illnesses and injuries, as well as the food, which was disgusting. But I definitely enjoyed was very intrigued by this book. And so there definitely no romance. There was a little bit with like the two characters, but like it was a very minor side plot. So it was very, very good. Next one, I only have the third book in this series, but I wanted to mention it, and it is Caesar's Lord. This is the third book in the Constantine's Empire series by Brian Litfin. And so this is a trilogy of books that are all kind of set around the same time as what's her name's? Wow, Francine Rivers series, the Mark of the Lion series. So if you like the Mark of the Lion, check out Brian Litfin's Constantine Empires. I really enjoyed the series. There definitely is romance, but it's kind of like roughly about the same amount as Mark of the Lion series, maybe even a little bit less in this series. But I just really enjoyed kind of the Roman era, and I don't really remember too much about it as I read this one last year, but I remember really enjoying it. And I mean, I compared it to the Francine Rivers Mark of the Lion series. So if you enjoyed that, I think you'll like this series. Okay, so the next series is Boo by Renee Gutteridge. There is 4 books in the series, and I love this series so much. There is romance, a little bit of romance throughout, but I would consider it probably a little bit more of a minor plot, especially in this first one. But we're following Boo, and he is a horror author, and in the town of Scary, I think it's Scary, yeah, Scary, Indiana, and it's so funny and so cute. So he becomes a Christian and he doesn't want to write horror books anymore. But there's this funny old lady who is like, the town's gonna collapse without his horror books because the town's known for his books. And so she conjures up some schemes and stuff to try to get him back to writing horror books. And it's just funny and entertaining, and I really enjoyed this series so much. And it's definitely more about just the little town feel than the romance, and it's funny and lighthearted, and I really enjoyed it. The next one is State of Lies by Siri Mitchell. Really no romance in this book. I mean, there might be a thing, yeah, not really any. But this is about a girl who, she is home and her husband says, you know, the sink is broken. I gotta go get a part because I can't fix it at home. So he leaves and ends up getting killed on his way to go get it. And so she is brokenhearted, but then things start not adding up. He wasn't supposed to be in that area that he was killed. I think he was a couple miles past where he was supposed to turn. And so she's like, why did he go there? She found out the sink didn't really need to get fixed. It only needed like a little adjustment and it was good to go. And then the coroner who did the autopsy is now arrested. So it's really great. It is a little bit of a political thriller, but I don't normally like politics in books, but this one was done really well and I really enjoyed it. And I want to read it again because it was so good. And I have another book by her. She wrote another thriller, and I need to read it. It was that good. I loved it. All right, so the next one is an historical fiction book, Christian fiction as well, and it's called Under the Tulip Tree. Well, these are all Christian fiction. I just realized the title of this video is Christian fiction. My brain. Okay, Under the Tulip Tree by Michelle Shockley. There really wasn't too much romance going on. If there was, I really don't remember it. That's why I'm considering it in this list. I don't remember there being that much. There might have been a little bit throughout, but I love the characters about this girl who she decides to get a job she wants to get a job as a reporter. And so she ends up getting a job of having to interview former slaves from the 1800s. And so she ends up going to this lady's house and hearing her story of how she grew up during the slavery times, what happened to her after she left. And so it was really good. It was my book pick for my readathon last year, and everyone seemed to love it who read it, so it ended up being really good. All right, the next one that I have is The All-American by Susie Finkbeiner. Honestly thought there was going to be a lot of romance in this book. There's not. Very, very little. This boy has a crush on her, and that's pretty much it. There's really nothing else. But I just really enjoyed it. This is a historical fiction book set in the 1950s when this girl, Bertha, she wants to become a baseball player. And it's dual perspective between her and her younger sister. And I love them both. Her younger sister, I really loved. She was so funny and so sweet. And so she wants to become involved with the baseball team, the Sweet Peas. And then her father ends up being accused of being in the Communist Party. So it's all about his dealings. Did he or didn't he? And so really enjoyed it. Definitely really no romance at all in that one. I have two more. The next one is The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp by Sarah Brunsvold. This is about a girl named Aiden. Yeah, Aiden. And she is going to go interview Mrs. Kipp. She kind of gets like her last chance assignment at her newspaper that she was working with. And so they're like, okay, go interview this lady who is in hospice and just pretty much do her obituary. And so she ends up going to go get her obituary. And there is so much more to Mrs. Kipp than Aiden ever realized. And the faith content was so great in this. I loved Clara Kipp's boldness and her just vivacity for life. And I loved her so much. I want to be Mrs. Kipp a year from now. Not when I'm older, but like I want to be Mrs. Kipp now. I'm more like an Aiden, but I'm getting a little bit better. Getting a little bit more Mrs. Kipp in me. But I really enjoyed this one. Definitely really minimum romance in it, and was not a book I was going to pick up because I don't like books with health issues. It's triggering for me, but I picked this one up and I loved it and I would read it again. The books are stacking. I have a nice little armrest here now. All right, so the last one that I'm going to talk about, which is a pretty heartbreaking one, but I do love it still, and that's Unspoken by Angela Hunt. This is about a woman named Glee, and she is training this gorilla to teach her sign language. When the zoo one day decides, hey, we want the gorilla back because we kind of need something to be a moneymaker pretty much. So she's like, no, you're not taking my gorilla. So it's pretty much her fight against the zoo, trying to keep the gorilla. And then things end up happening where she ends up starting to work at the zoo. And she's very much a very selfish woman, but I understand her motives because honestly, I would be the same way. I would want to keep the gorilla. But just her attitude kind of towards everybody. Thankfully, things do change throughout the book, but if you're an animal lover, this is a very heartbreaking book, and I love gorillas, and I sobbed. So, yes, I physically sobbed, and I don't cry very much in books, so this one got me. So yeah, so I think that's all the books that I have for now. I do try to read more books without romance, so I can recommend them to you, but so far this is it. I don't think I can hold them all up, but if you want a screenshot, there they are. But yeah, so those are the ones that I have for Christian fiction with little bit to no romance. So I probably do have more on my shelves, but this is all that I grabbed for now. But yeah, so hopefully some of these will appeal to you, or maybe you can pass them on to your guy loved ones or whatever, to introduce them to some fun Christian fiction. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Let me know if you have other recommendations for me. I would love to hear them, and maybe I just forgot to mention them, or I'll put them on my list to try to read at some point. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video.